Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brien Gearin, back in the saddle with you today. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I'm joined by Wayne Seminoff. He is the owner of Junkland into Gold. And what he does, guys, is he buys junk land for $1,000 and he sells it for upwards of $400,000. You heard that right, $1,000 into $400,000. So first of all, Wayne, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, glad to be here.
Yeah, this is exciting because when I learned you were coming on the show, I was super stoked because I have 1 million questions about this. Super curious, especially when your lead line is $1,000 into $400,000. So I don't think you could beat that or pique any more curiosity in that fashion than you have here. So again, thanks for joining us today.
Yes.
Wayne, let's jump right in here. So before I start peppering you with questions here. What's your origin story? How did you get into what you're doing? And, who is Wayne Seminoff?
Yeah. Well, first, let me tell you what I do just really quickly is I specialize in buying junk property that nobody else wants. And I do these, there's 6 or 7 fixes that you can fix junk to make it buildable. And then I sell it. And any of those multiply the property value by 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, sometimes 1,000 times. It's just unbelievable because nobody knows what junk land is worth. And you can buy it for peanuts because, especially if it looks like junk. And typically I buy stuff for, $1,000 a lot. So I bought one a month ago for $500. So anyways, that's what I do. And let me tell you the story is, about 40 years ago when I was a young guy like you, and I was broke and I didn't have any money. And I just gotten a master's degree from business in Atlanta. And I decided to move to Seattle where my wife's family was. And I came here and I thought, well, I'll just look for a job. What the hell? I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I went to University of Washington Job Board, and they have those little cards on the wall, those little cards. And this guy said, those. Real estate consultant for company in Federal Way. And I went, well, what the hell? And they said they pay like $5,000-$10,000 a month, and I went, really? Okay, I'll answer that. And yeah. And so I answered the card, and the guy, he was the president of the company in New York, and he worked for ITT, and ITT owned this company. And he says, I'm in New York. You're the only guy that answered the ad. You're hired. And I said, okay. And he says, I knew how much he was asking, he's going to pay. And he says, and how much do you want for pay? And I doubled what he said. And he said, yes. He says, you're the only guy, you got me by the balls, So I said, yeah. So I got, I hit the ground running. I was making the equivalent then of, I don't know what it'd be today, but it'd be like a lot of money a month, yeah. I don't know, probably equivalent to like 10, 20, 30,000 a month today, I can't remember. Yeah. It was big. So anyways, I went to work for this real estate company. Didn't know a thing about real estate, but I'm a really good researcher. And I just delved into learning real estate. I learned everything about real estate. I studied everything there was. I studied the real estate license stuff. And I really got good at figuring stuff out. In fact, I figured out stuff I can go all the way down to zero on land, on just unbelievable. Anyways, I learned all the stuff. And then I got out of that job, and then I decided to go to work as a real estate salesman. Because I thought, okay, now I know this, so I'll sell real estate. And I found out that when you work for real estate companies, I sold commercial real estate. I sold my first deal, and it was a huge deal. It was like $500,000 then, which is today is like $5 million. And the commission was 10%. And when they subtracted out, everybody took their little piece of the pie. I ended up with like 1/4%, like $5,000 or something, and I went, really? And I looked at the sales sheet, and what really dawned on me was the seller got 90% of the money. My company got 10% of the money. And I said, I'm on the wrong side of this equation. So I decided to become a seller. Even though I didn't have money, I said, I'm going to start buying property no matter how you do it. I'm going to be buying property and not being a seller. The agents get peanuts and the sellers get 90%. So I looked around and I found that you could buy property at the tax sale for $100 in those days, and these auctions. So I started looking at auctions, and that's where I started buying property. And I didn't really have a clue what to do, but I just started buying them because for $100, I had $100. I had actually had 1,000. I bought 10 properties, and I didn't know what to do with them. And then I just started finding what the problems were by going to the cities and figuring out how to solve them. And to my amazement is that a lot of these junk properties were really easy to fix, to make them buildable. And once you make them buildable, the multipliers are astronomical. If you buy, because you buy a property in those days, the properties they were selling for like $100,000, and so you get 10 to 1 on your money, and maybe spend just a little bit of doing a study or something. But like variances, I learned that if you got a variance on a property, like if you got a little baby property, it's too small to build on, you go to the city, you say, "Can I build on this if I get a variance?" And they go, "Yeah, you can get you. We'll make the side yards really small." So I had a piece of property that was it was about 1,200 square feet triangle, and I went to the city. I said, "Well, with the setbacks, there's no room to build. You got 20 feet in the front and all this bullshit." And he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to do 1 foot all the way around." And they go, "Okay." And the city allowed me to have 1 foot setbacks all the way around. And I sold this thing for $100,000.
Wow.
And it took me about 3 months. And that was my first big bang, And I went, "Shit, this is great." And
Yeah.
I said, "This is really good stuff." And then I did more. And then I found there's other things you can do, like you can do boundary line adjustments or clear title, or if it didn't have sewer, fix the sewer problems. But the beauty of it is that nobody knows what raw land is worth, junk raw land is worth. Nobody knows. And most of the owners don't know, because they think they call the city, they go in the front door. People who go in the front door get killed. They call the city and say, "I got this piece of junk land. Can I build?" I said, "No, you can't build on it. It's too small." And then they hang up on you because they don't want to help you. I mean, I got another customer on another line. Goodbye.
Right.
But if you go in and you really sit down with these guys and say, "Now look, I got this thing. I got to be able to do something with it. What are the back doors to make this buildable?" And then I talked to the guys, and they taught me most of the tricks. That's how I learned them, is by asking these guys and studying stuff too. But asking these guys, and they say, "Well, if you do this or you do that," and the higher up I went in the command, like I've got the director of building, they had some real esoteric tricks that nobody knows. The old guys, and they taught me some of this crazy stuff that you can do. That you can create land out of nothing. That's one trick. I actually created some lots out of thin air, and I sold them for a couple $100,000. But the key to this thing is it is so easy. Once you know the tricks, it's I call it stupid simple. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it. And so I did it, and I did it for 40 years, and I got really good at it, and I did gobs of them. I'll tell you my best one that also, the market never goes away on this, because there's always more junk land. Because the reason there's junk land is because these people, they're called don't wanters. They don't want their property because they've owned it for years and years. They can't do anything, but they call the city. The city says it's worthless. And then they just don't know what to do with it. So they let it go in the tax sale. So I go to the tax sale and I pick out the cherry pick it, and then I do it that way. But one point I wanted to make is the market never ends. And I've been doing this for 40 years. And my best deal I just did. I mean, it gets better and better. There was a tax sale about a year ago. And normally I go through the whole list and I call all the out-of-state owners, because anybody who lives out of state is probably a don't wanter. I mean, if you live in some, in the Midwest and you own a piece of junk land in Seattle, you're a target, for buying it. So I called this guy. I only made one call out of the list, of the whole list. There's 150 properties. I only called one guy, and he had a beautiful half-acre lot. No, let's see. Yeah, it was about a half-acre lot in downtown Issaquah, right across the street from commercial area in a residential zone. Beautiful, flat, clear, gorgeous lot, water, sewer, and power, ready to build. And I called him. I said, "Why are you letting this property go in the tax sale?" He says, "The title's all screwed up." He says there was a glitch in the title and we couldn't sell it. And he said we even tried to give it to the city for free stuff. And the city told him, "No, we don't want it because you can't give us clear title." And that's one of my tricks. I know how to clear title in an instant. I can do that really easy. And I said, "Well, will you sell it to me?" He says, "Sure." And he says, well, I said, will you sell it to me for $500? And he says, "What do you think? I'm crazy or something?" And I said, "Well, how much do you want for it?" He says, "Well, how about $1,000? How about $1,000?" And my heart started beating like this. I go, "Well, I guess I can take it.
You drive a hard bargain.
All right, you drive a hard bargain. And
Yeah.
so I signed him up, sent him $1,000 on Venmo, got the deed, and I was the owner like within about 5 days. Okay.
Wow.
At that
So
point,
what is junk land? Like, what is it precisely?
what is
In my mind, I'm thinking just a slab of land, maybe in a rough part of town. It's got a bunch of junk on it. Is that accurate?
no, no,
Okay.
no.
Tell us what it is.
I do high quality junk land. I do Rolex junk land or Gucci or Ferragamo junk land. Okay. What I do is
Okay.
I find little slivers of property in very high rent neighborhoods, like where Bill Gates lives in Bellevue. I look
Hmm.
in that neighborhood and I find a little piece of property that's worth, a $500,000 or $1 million if it's buildable. Okay. So that's my target. And I found several where I live here in Kirkland, very high rent area, right on the water on Lake Washington. It's gorgeous.
Hmm.
And I found two properties here, right, like within a half a mile of my house. And because I just scour the neighborhood and look for something that's goofy that's never been built on. And I found one that was a block from my house, one block, from my house.
Wow.
And it was a wetland. And typically you can't build on wetlands. It was a third of an acre lot. I bought it at the tax sale for $1,250. That's $1,250, and I sold it for $400,000. But it took me 2.5 years to get a building permit for it. I got a building permit and sold it with a building permit. So, that's how I got the $400,000. And I had to put some money into it over time, to get the permit, but not too much. It was I think I put in about 35,000 on that one. But and then I found another one right up the hill here by Costco. And it's right behind the Costco in a really nice residential neighborhood. And I paid $1,500 for that one. And and what I decided to do is keep that one, and I built a fiveplex boarding house on it. So now the land underneath the boarding house is worth $400,000. That's the market, of the land. But I have a building on it. So, and I was able to, like when you buy stuff that cheap, it's really easy to build on it because you can get a loan on it because you can put up the land to get a loan, and they give you market value for the land. Once the city deems it buildable, then you can get a loan on it, and you don't have to put any money into it to get a loan. And so you can actually build it for free.
Wow.
$0 to build it. Zero, nothing out of your pocket. So it's crazy. One point I really want to make is that why in the hell am I doing this? Why am I talking to you? I just turned 82, and I'm starting to lose my mental capabilities as I get older, and I can feel that if it continues, eventually there'll be nothing there. And I want to share everything I have in my brain before I die with young people who want to go out there and just kill it and make a good deal and just have fun and get rich and do what I did, except without having to beat your head against the wall for 40 years. So
I love
what I
that.
did is I summarized, I've got 40 years of extremely valuable real estate knowledge that I'm going to give to the universe. And that was my whole future now is to teach people how to make gobs of money in real estate. And I have some other things I'm teaching people too. I have 2 other sites I do. One is Ask Wayne Anything, where I'll just share any. I know so much about everything. I got degrees up to yin yang. I know a lot, and I'll share that. And if people want to ask me, I'll answer it. If I can't find the answer, I'll find it with somebody else. And
you might need an Ask Wayne podcast.
yeah, I know. Ask me. And then I have another one. Another one is one valuable thing I want to teach people is how to get into love energy all day long. Because if you're in love energy all day long, it doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, if you're winning or losing, or what life's doing to you, you're happy. And I want to teach people how to be happy, and I can do that too. And that's another site. It's called achieveloveenergy.com. And so those are the 3 things I'm doing. But basically, the whole goal is to take my brain and share it with people out there who could use it.
That's awesome. Well, you're in the right place because we're reaching a whole heck of a lot of people on this show. And yeah, by the way, you don't look a day over like 60, so you're doing pretty darn well.
I know. The outside looks really good. Inside, marginal. Marginal.
Oh, no, that's good. So with this junk land, so you mentioned tax sales. So are these like, for anybody out there listening, can they just, whatever town you're based in, can you go find any old tax sale? Do these happen regularly? Are they through the county or the city, the state? How does that work? Where do you what are these first steps you take to go find this junk land?
Okay. Typically, most states on the Midwest and East, they have the same system. The counties once a year have a tax foreclosure sale. That's if the state has property tax. And if you don't pay your taxes after 3 years, that property goes into the tax sale. And once a year comes out, and it's kind of like a hobby for me. The list comes out. When it first comes out, it has like 500 properties on it or something like that. But then people start paying their taxes off. By the time the sale comes, there's maybe 100 properties left or 50 or whatever. And so it diminishes. And the best time to buy the tax sale property is before the sale, because then you're not competing with anybody. So you get the list and you just start calling guys. Well, first you look at what I do is I get the list and the first thing I do is I look at the property and see what it looks like. If it looks like viable stuff. Some of it is such junky stuff you could never build on, like a 1-foot strip.
Right.
You can't do that. But if it's a viable piece in a viable neighborhood, I'll call the guy. And then if he's a don't wanter, he'll sell it to me. And I'd say I only made 1 call on that 1 tax sale. Oh, and I didn't tell you about that one is that I ended up buying it for $1,000. Market value of that property is $500,000. So the day I bought it, it was almost worth $500,000 if I could clear the title. And I went to my attorney and I said, okay, clear the title. This is how you do it. Because I teach attorneys how to do this stuff because I've been doing it for so long. I know how to teach them that. And I said, this is what you do on how to clear the title. And in 3 months, he cleared the title, and it cost me $13,000, I think, to clear the title and legal fees. So in 3 months, that property was worth $500,000. But I'm greedy. And so I went to the city and I said, can I split this lot into 2 lots and then have each lot worth $500,000? They said, yeah. So I applied for a short subdivision. So now I'm splitting the property into 2 lots, and I'll have that in 30 days. I'll have 2 separate lots that are completely buildable that are worth $500,000 a piece. And I'm going to put them on the market and sell them. So that's $1 million. I'm going to make $1 million off my investment of $1,000 to buy it and say $1,300 to clear the title.
Wow. That's incredible.
I mean, that's incredible.
Is that 1,000x?
It's my best deal. It's my best deal ever.
Yeah.
I've done 400 to 1. I've done 300 to 1. This is like, I don't even know what the multiplier is, but to make $1 million.
Next level.
But this is real easy to do. This is not I didn't have to, you don't, if you find the right spot, it's really easy to do. I mean, I only had to make one or two phone calls. I had to call the
Yeah.
guy and I had to call my attorney. I had to make two phone calls, you know.
So do you have certain cities you work in? Do you only work local to you?
Yeah.
Can you do this everywhere? How
Okay.
does that work?
You can do it anywhere you want. And I'm lazy, so I only work within a 45-minute radius of where I drive. Okay. Because I'm
Okay.
not driving 2 or 3 hours to look at a piece of property, and
Right.
deal with jurisdictions that I don't know about. So I live in King County, which is pretty big. And I've learned everything about all the rules in King County. I know them upside down and backwards. And so I just play here, but I can play in any county, anywhere, because it's universal. There's always people who are don't wanters who don't want their property. There's always people who will sell for peanuts, and you just have to find those people and find out where they're at in your wherever you are. And you can even do it in downtown Manhattan. I mean, it could be anywhere. Um,
So could this be as easy as getting on your local county auditors, the maps they have where it shows property lines with the names on? I don't know, but
Yeah,
that's how they do it in
that's
Ohio.
exactly right. Yeah, in fact, they have here. It's called IMAP, and you go to it's the parcel viewer map of all the parcels in
Yeah.
your county. And another way to do it is just to go to the map and just pick an area you want to look at, and just look for like a whole development. You'll see a normal development, like all these little boxes, and then you see a little triangle on the corner that's never developed, and you can push a button to see which ones have houses and which ones don't, and look for the one with no houses on it. And if it's got a little teeny corner, and if it's 1,000 feet or more, you can put a house on it.
A
A thousand,
thousand feet.
a thousand
So
feet. 1,000 feet,
1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet. That's like
That's
it's
tiny.
20 by 50. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
20,
nothing.
or 30 by 40. I mean, it's just if you can put a. This is how I look at it. The smallest house you can put on a lot is like 20 by 30. You know, a reasonable
Hmm.
house, 20 by 20, 20 by 30. And if you can put a 20 by 25 foot house on the lot, 1,000 square foot lot, even if it has to be triangular, you can put it on there. And I
Wow.
have built
Did,
triangular houses.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Does this work in rural areas or suburban areas just as well as it? I imagine where you live, it's a little bit more like probably the lots are maybe, a quarter acre at best with your house on it in a small yard. Tell me if I'm wrong, but does it work just as well in tighter neighborhoods versus suburban versus rural?
It works in any neighborhood, no matter what size the property, because you could have, like a 50-acre parcel that is deemed non-buildable because it's too wet, for example, you know, and
Hmm.
um, and it could be out in Idaho or Montana or someplace. But I know how to make non-buildable wetland buildable, no matter what the size is, and
So, do you, when you say using wetlands as an example, I imagine there are other like EPA laws, like federal or state jurisdiction stuff that you have to work around. Like, how do you do that?
Oh yeah, no. Luckily, on wetlands, you don't have to do federal or state stuff. Luckily,
Okay.
on land, if it's wetland on a river or a stream, then you're screwed. Okay,
Yeah, and
then
you might not want to build there either
the
for
U.S. Department of
flooding
it's called
purposes.
the U.S. Government Department of Engineers. Okay.
Yeah, they might have something to say about that.
Yeah, and I've dealt with them, and I have done work with them. But once you get in that rat's nest, it's a nightmare. No,
Okay.
mostly wetland is a county issue, or
Hmm.
city or county, depending on where you live, city or county, and you just deal with the
Okay.
guys who write the rules in the city or county, and you can build in a wetland, and most people don't know that. In
Hmm.
fact,
Okay.
you buy a property. Well, that's a wetland. You can't build on it. But theoretically, you can build on anything, even if it's wet or it's steep or it's, who knows. Uh, there's tip. You can almost build on any land, no matter how bad it is. I'd say
Right.
that's true like 90% of the time. There are some stuff you cannot build on. Period.
Right.
But
Okay.
uh,
So you mentioned like some of the land you have to, or all or most of the land you buy, you fix it up in some fashion. So what is fixing? Is it taking down trees? Is it cleaning up junk? Is it grading out wetland? What does the fixing look
No, the
like?
fixing is legal fixing. You fix the
Oh.
rules. See, like you do it all on paper. It's all done on paper. And for example, if you don't have access, okay, you buy a landlocked piece of property. I teach people how to get access. You go to the neighbor and you buy an access easement from the neighbor. Simple, you know. And so you buy a landlocked property and you get a driveway I pay a guy 10,000 for a driveway, and then now my property's worth 100 or more thousand, because it's right behind his house. Or another one would be it doesn't perk, so like it needs a sewer system, and it can't connect to sewer for whatever reason. And again, I use that same easement thing. I find a neighbor who you can give money to, who will give you an easement to run the line through his yard or up at, to the street where yeah. Another one is clearing title. A lot of these things, the paperwork, some happened. The title got all screwed up in the old days. What that means is the deed, when they make deeds to properties, they record them, and somewhere along the line they missed a recording. They did a deed and nobody recorded it, and then another guy bought it and sold it. Another guy bought it and sold it. So there's this hole in the title, and when that happens, it's not legal title and they can't sell it.
Really?
Yeah, it kills the title, and that happens a lot because like over the years, things get screwed up every once in a while. Or somebody forgot to record a deed they got, but they sold it to their cousin Joe, or they died, and then the wife inherited it, and she sold it to somebody, and
It just wasn't recorded
it
properly.
wasn't recorded at all, at all.
Oh, okay.
And so you can fix those links. There's ways to fix them. It's easy. And then another one I do is this one's really crazy. It's called boundary line adjustment. You can buy. Let's say you have. You buy a little lot that's like 20 feet wide, and it's next to a house that's got a 200-foot wide yard. Okay, big yard, and let's say it's a high rent area where the lots are worth $500,000 a piece. You go to the guy over here and you say, "I want to move your lot line over just enough so I can put a house on this little baby lot, and if I do that, I'll give you half the profit." So I said, if you let me do that, I can sell the lot for $500,000. So I'll give you $250,000 if you let me move your lot line over just 20 feet or 10 feet or whatever the minimum is. You still have your giant yard, but the back part of your yard now belongs to me. It actually belongs to both of us. And then I sell it, and you make $250,000, and you don't have to do anything.
Wow.
You have to do nothing. You make $250,000 for just watching me do this stuff. And I make $250,000 on a lot I paid $1,000 for.
Yeah. Wow. You probably don't even have to offer him half the profit. I mean, you come to my house and tell me that, you say $10,000, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah, right. No, my thing has always been 50-50 with partners. I just, I'm always been generous with the money because, why not? If I'm making tons of money, share it,
Abundance, baby.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, no, I share it. I always go 50-50 with people, and it's just my nature.
Okay.
That's fixing. That's
fixing.
Fixing goes from unbuildable to buildable. That's what fixing does. It goes unbuildable to build. And sometimes you have to do 2 or 3 things. You might need an easement for access. You might need a boundary line adjustment, and you might need to clear title, on one property.
Wow. Okay. So let's say you've got this piece of land, you cleared the title. Now you just put it on the open market. Do you call developers? Is there a website you place these listings on? How do you sell it and get that cash?
Okay. You have to find a really good real estate agent who specializes in land and tough land. And there's hundreds of bad real estate agents out there. Yeah. So you just got to shop around and find somebody who's a land guy and who knows how to sell junk land. And it's kind of an art. And luckily I have a good guy. I've been working with for 20 years, and he can sell stuff that is truly unbuildable to people, and I mean stuff that I can't build on. He sold some of my properties that I could never build on, and he sold them, you know,
Wow.
because he's such a good salesman. So a lot of people will buy property just to buy property, just to be a property owner, and not really ever do anything with it. There's a market for that. It's weird.
Okay. So you have to have a good agent, and that agent is somebody who's skilled in being able to find, I guess, whether it's residential or commercial, depending on what the land is,
Yeah.
being able to find a buyer who wants to actually develop the land and turn it into something.
Right, right. And
Okay.
there's different levels of development you can do. Like some things, I can turn it in 30 days. You just buy it and do a simple fix with a phone call and sell it and make, well, I'll tell you one I did is it was a guy like me who bought and sold properties, and he couldn't get this property to work. The sewer was 15 feet in front of the lot. It's a Lakeview lot down in South King County. And he called the sewer company, told him to get lost. So the only sewer you can connect to was $500,000 away. You can put a sewer line in there, but it was 500,000. And so I bought the lot from him because I knew I'm better than he was and I could do it. And and so I called the sewer company and they said no. And it took me about a month to argue with the sewer company. I call them, every day, and then I showed them a map. I said, well, here's what you're saying I have to do, and I drew them a map. I said, here's the sewer solution that you're giving me, and that's $500,000. So what you're telling me is I can never build on my $100,000 lot because I have to pay $500,000 to get to it to sell it for $100,000. And he goes, well, okay, we'll let you connect to the 15-foot thing. Okay. It was all on a phone call. 30 days later, I sold it for $60,000. So I bought it, on the first of the month, I sold it at the end of the month for $60,000.
Wow.
And my total investment was $1,000 and the phone call.
A little bit of sweat equity.
Yeah, right. But it's just knowing what to say, and how to do it. It was
right.
And the guy I bought it from, he's a smart guy and he knows how to do stuff like me, but he's not as good as me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like to one up on him. So I did that with that. And he got really upset when he found out what I did. He didn't sell me any more property after that.
Yeah, they might have burnt that boat.
Yeah. So he says, God damn it, Wayne. God damn it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something, this sounds like just about anybody can do it. If you have, if you have a little bit of time, and B, it sounds like if they work with you, they're going to get all the knowledge that they can, or that they need in order to take the processes and go step by step and work through them. So if you're someone who's interested in this now, or maybe you were prior and now you've got more information, what's the first step? Is it going to a tax sale? Is it, it sounds like you don't even need, first of all, just capital wise, you don't need a lot of capital to find something. Like you're buying stuff for $500 and $1,000, right? Like that's a minimum investment.
Yeah.
So it sounds like call it $1,000, you go to a tax sale, you find a certain property. Is it as easy as we're saying it is?
Yes, it is. I told you the one I did where it's the $1 million deal. How easy was that? But the first thing you have to do, you have to get my program that teaches you the 8 steps it's the 8 ways to make the property buildable. You have to know what the 8 steps are to know if a property is viable or not. That's the first thing you do. So you have to get the program. It's called junklandintogold.com. That's my site. And it's and you can get the program. And then all you have to do is learn one, really. If you learn one good one, just one of them, you can become a millionaire. If you learn all of them, you easily become a millionaire. But all you need is one. You can be boundary line adjustment or sewer solutions or boundary line adjust. Any one of those, if you become really good at it, you just rubber stamp it. And you can do it over and over and over again. But you have to know when you first get the map that shows what the property looks like, you got the list, you look at a property, you go, oh, that fits with item number 1, number 6, number 3, that'll fix it. But if you don't know the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you can't tell if it's a good or bad piece. So you have to know that first. Then once you know that, it's like falling off a rock easy. I mean, it's so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you what I did. I just called the guy. I knew that, clearing title was one of the tricks that you could do. And he says, oh yeah, it's just the title screwed up and I'll sell it to you for $1,000. I mean, how, one phone call for the whole tax sale. I'll make $1 million.
What are some of the pitfalls to look for, right? Like, so if you go to a tax sale, you find what looks promising, $1,000, you call the guy up. What are you asking them? Are there like a few questions you ask? So one sounds like title. Like, what are the pitfalls you can run into that for you would be a red flag as an attempted buyer?
Okay, well, let me answer that quickly. I just say one sentence to anybody I call. I say, hi, my name's Wayne Seminoff. I see you have a property in the tax sale. Are you going to let it go in the tax sale? And if they say yes, and I already know it's a good property, then I say, well, okay, I'd like to buy it from you. That's it. That's all I say. That's it.
Really?
That's the entire conversation. That's all I say.
And the majority of them will say yes because it was going to.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I said, well, another thing I say, another line I could say, I say, well, if you're going to let it go in the tax sale, I'll buy it from you, so you get some cash out of the deal, rather than just losing the property. But that's a more elaborate thing. But you don't have to say that. Mm-hmm. But and I said, well, okay, I'll give you $500 for it. At least you get something.
Yeah. Wow.
And
okay.
And I bought such dramatic things at the tax sale. I bought a new ski chalet up in Stevens Pass on 1.5 acres with a stream and a river and beautiful, gorgeous house. And I paid. I called the guy up and I said, "You can let it go in the sale." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, will you take $1,000 for it?" He says, "What do you think? I'm crazy?" And then so we argued a little bit. He finally sold it for $2,000.
Yeah,
$2,000.
And it had a house on it?
Two a complete build. This is a gorgeous, airtight, beautiful chalet cabin in Stevens Pass.
Why would he give it away for $2,000?
Who knows? I don't ask. I don't see. I don't ask people that. I don't ask people that. I just
show me the money, right?
I just the money, and then
wow. Okay, so there's really not even like when you're on this call, it's like, will you sell this to me or not? And the answer will be yes or it will be no. When the answer is yes, do you then, it's all just a matter of transferring the title. And occasionally you find a bad title. And that's okay because you have a remedy for it.
Yes, right. Yeah, and once the guy says yes, speed is critical. There's a thing that says, if you're going to steal from somebody, you got to steal really fast so they don't see you. Okay. And it's like stealing, but it's not stealing. But so you do, as soon as the guy says yes, you go as fast as you can. And what I do first is I send him the money immediately before he's even signed anything. So I'll Venmo or Zelle or something. If the guy says, yeah, I'll sell it for $1,000, I say, okay, here, I'll send you the money, in 10 minutes. And I send him the money and then I send him the deed electronically, and have him sign it and send it back to me. It needs to be notarized. And, but I'm also a notary, so I can notarize the deeds too. So he signs the deed, sends it back, and I notarize it. Or you can have it notarized online, and there's different ways you can notarize it immediately. But speed is really critical because once people start thinking about a deal, it goes to hell.
Yeah.
They go, am I really, like they talk to their brother and they say, you mean you sold that property for $1,000, you idiot?
Yeah.
Going back,
before someone knocks some sense
sorry,
into it.
It's the price now $20,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
but you can have ownership. You don't need, this isn't like buying or selling a home where you need a title company and an agent, and this is just a matter of simply paying them and transferring the deed and having it notarized.
That's right. And then I have to record the deed. That's what all that other bullshit is where they record the deed for you. And so I know how to record them. I can do it electronically just from my desk. Then I record it. If you don't record the deed, you don't have ownership. Real
Okay.
critical. You can have the deed to a property, but if you don't record it, it's worth nothing. So,
And that's something you can do. You don't need an agent of the county or
well,
anyone to
if
do.
a
You
new
can do
guy doesn't
that.
know how to do it, you just go down to the county and say record it, and they give it costs you, $100 or $50 or something to record it, you
Gotcha.
know, and they
Okay.
do it for you, and they'll walk you through it, even if you don't know what you're doing. They'll walk you through it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can do it electronically now because you join the. I do so many deeds. I'm a commercial guy, so I just have
Okay.
an account and I push some buttons and I record it right here from my desk.
Well, so that leads into my next question, which is, how many of these do you do in a day, a week, and a month, and how much? Like, what's the possibilities with this in terms of earning potential? I mean, it sounds like the sky's the absolute limit, but is there a limit to how much one guy can do on all these deals?
Um, there's infinite approaches to it. I approach it like a hobby because I love it because it's every time I do it, I feel like I'm gold mining. Like every time, like you get a
Hmm.
pan of gravel, and is every list I get is a pan of gravel in the tax sale, and in every pan of gravel, there's a one gold nugget at least. Sometimes there's three or four, sometimes there's five, sometimes there's 10, but most of the time there's at least one gold nugget in every pot, every pan that I get, or every tax sale list. Okay, and
Hmm.
and so and I get excited when I'm chasing the gold. When I start chasing gold, I can smell it, I can taste it. I feel like a prospector out in the mountains, going, "Hey, I can see a little bit of gold here." If I dig a little deeper, and
Yeah.
it really pulls me forward. I don't have to push to do what I do; it pulls me. And as soon as I get
Wow.
the list, I get so excited. I go, God, I'm like, hey, let's go. And I've looked at lists for 40 years, and each list still gets me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there do you have competition? Are there a lot of people out there doing what you do? I mean, obviously, maybe not in the same way you do because you have all the top knowledge, but is there a lot of competition?
No, there's basically nobody does what I do. I'm really way ahead of the pack. Nobody has ever developed this program that I have that has all these tricks. Nobody's. I call attorneys. They never even heard of what I do. You know. I
Huh.
mean, it's. I have to teach them what I do.
Yeah.
Because they just. You go, really? How can you build on that? That's impossible. And a lot of times I go to the city and they don't believe that it's buildable, and I have to convince the city. I have to teach the city guys that there's certain laws that allow you to build on this junk property that they don't even know about.
Wow.
And I can tell you how esoteric it is. There's a law passed in 1895 in King County that says that if a county road, has not been opened for 5 years from 1895 forward, and it's still unopened today, the neighbor can get that land for free and just by asking the city to give it to them.
Wow.
And so what I did is I used that law and I went around, I found where there was unopened city land that was platted as a road that's unopened. And I bought the lots next to it. And then I gained all that land for free. And I could buy a 1 foot strip. I could buy a 1 foot strip next to the unopened road and end up with a 60-foot wide road that I own. And I do this in
Wow.
high rent neighborhoods. I don't do this in boony land. I do this right in
Yeah.
downtown Kirkland.
Wow. And then you're flipping these lots, right? It sounds like maybe you do your own building on a few of them, or is it more so you flip them?
I'm not really a builder, but I've built on some. The way to do this is you get it ready and sell it to a builder. That's you
Right.
don't. If you want to build it, that's fine. But building is a whole other thing, and it's a lot of
Yeah.
work, and it's very difficult. And it's just you just if you want to go there, fine. But for the way to make this thing work is just to do the numbers game. Just get it ready for building, sell it. To somebody to build it,
Yeah.
and enroll. Do 5 or 10 of those, or else do one that you build because it takes the same amount of time to do 10 deals as it would to build one deal. You spend
Yeah.
all your time building this stupid thing. Where you could be doing
Yeah.
10 cool deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
yeah, I wanted to show you what the list looks like here. I just
yeah.
got the list from King County here. It just came in the mail yesterday, but I'll show you what it looks like. It's they file a lawsuit to make the tax sale. So this is the lawsuit, and they give you the lawsuit's on the top, and then the exhibit is the tax sale list. So here, I'll show you the tax sale list here.
Okay. And for those listening, this is looks like a pretty legal document coming from the city
Yeah,
and
it's from the
listing
county,
out all the
King County.
properties, or from the county.
Yeah, and
Okay.
this is the list, and you can see it's I don't
That's
know
a
how
long
many, it's
list.
that many pages, but this is what it looks like, and it has the parcel number over here and who owns it,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows his address, and you can see, and then I go through the list right away, and I say, who doesn't live here, and I call him up.
Yeah.
But before I call him, then I'll go and I'll look this up on that tax map when that shows all the
Uh-huh.
parcels, and then I'll see, is that a viable junk piece of land? Does it fit any of the 8 rules? And if it does, then I call the guy up, and I'm going, okay, if this guy says yes, I'm going to jump on this one,
Wow.
and
Okay. And then is it easy to find the contact information for these owners?
yeah, relatively. Well, I have really good search engines, but
Okay.
you can go online and they have all these search. You have to pay, and
Yeah.
I join a good site that has a good search engine because you're going to be calling
Okay.
people all the time. So you go
Right.
and they have different search engines, and in my program, I tell people the ones that I use, and
Mm-hmm.
which ones to use. I use the ones that the FBI uses. I mean, really
Ooh,
high level,
okay.
heavy duty. I can
Yeah.
find people in, no matter Timbuktu, and their kids,
Yeah.
their aunts, and their uncles, and their goldfish. I can find everybody.
Yeah. You could moonlight as an FBI agent too.
Hey, get this! I once found some property that was owned by the CIA by a front organization, and this was in Texas. And they were so many levels down. They wanted to be really hidden. And I called them up. I called up the CIA, and I'm talking to them. I said, I want to buy your property. They said, how do you find us? How do you figure out it was our property? We're hidden at all these different levels.
Yeah.
Well, that's how life goes. So they were real upset that I knew they owned the property.
Wow.
They wouldn't
That's
sell it to me.
amazing.
They wouldn't sell it to me.
Yeah. The dang feds.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Wayne, we're up against the clock here. I want to make sure I get you back to your busy day. This has been awesome. I could probably go another hour with you on just curious questions, but I want to make sure that all our listeners out there, that they can find you and check you out and learn more from you. What's the best way to do that?
Okay. The key to this whole thing is you go to my website. It's called junklandintogold.com. Junklandintogold.com. And then and I'm selling the program. If they put in your name as a code, Brien, Brien, they can buy the program for $500.
Ooh,
I mean,
okay.
$500.
I like that.
This is the bar. I mean, for what it costs me a lot more to do the program than I'm getting from the program. This is giving it away.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Okay.
I like 50 videos and 2 books and all the training stuff that we do and also this goes on forever. It's not like you buy the program and it's over with. We got it set up where we hold your hand all the way through, forever,
Okay.
and you could
Is it you and a couple partners or coaches, or is it just you handling it?
I have a partner.
Okay.
I have a partner, and he's
Okay.
a coach also, and he's a real estate expert too. And
Okay.
so he does the nuts and bolts mostly. I'm more the idea guy, and
Okay.
and he's the nuts and bolts guy. But he's the one who he's done seminars and made millions of dollars on real estate seminars. So he's also
Okay.
very qualified. This is for a young guy who wants a side gig, where he's working his regular job, and he can look at it as a hobby, and he goes out there and he just does it on the side until he gets one big hit, and then maybe it's big enough where he can quit his job, and then he can do it full time, and then get lots more hits, or just always have it, as a side gig.
Yeah.
Me, it's always been kind of a side. I do several businesses, and I do this one as a hobby. this is my hobby. I don't have to do it anymore. I do it because I love it. I got,
Yeah.
somebody fix cars or whatever. I go and I get that property, the tax sale list, and I go crazy. This is where I spend my
Wow.
time. I go, God, look at that. Look at that property. Man, look at that one. Oh, that
Just
guy's in Timbuktu.
yeah. Panning for gold.
Panning for gold. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, Wayne, thank you so much. And guys, you heard it here first. Check out his website and use my name, Brien. Don't forget that E as the code. You're going to get into Wayne's program for $500. So, Wayne, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been amazing. It was a ton of fun. I thank you again.
Well, thank you, and yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I always enjoy this stuff, and also to everybody out there, lots of love to everybody, because if you stay in love energy, nothing matters. Love
I
you
love it.
guys.
I love it. Thank you.